Hi, and welcome to my Messy Muse, a place for kidlit peeps to embrace the messiness of their everyday lives. Through interviews with fabulous kidlit talent, editors, and agents who share their own personal struggles, we will inspire your kidlit journey. I'm your host, Michelle McAvoy, an author, attorney, and mom of two whose life is really, really messy. I turn it around almost every single day, and so can you. Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of my Messy Muse. Today I had the opportunity to interview Ariel Bernstein. She is a children's book author with picture books and chapter books published. Her newest chapter book series that was published this past August 2018, entitled Warren and Dragon, and 2 more in that series coming out in 2019. She also has fabulous picture books published. She has I Have a Balloon that's already out, and she has 2 more picture books coming out, one in 2019 entitled Where Is My Balloon?, a sequel to her I Have a Balloon picture book, and another picture book being released in fall 2020 called We Love Fishing. This interview was super fun with Ariel. We talk about all things publishing. We talk about the highs and lows of being a published author. And she opens up about her writing process for picture books and how it may or may not be different to writing chapter books. And finally, her advice for those out there who are looking to get into the business. What is the one parting advice that Ariel Bernstein gives at the end of her interview? You will have to listen to see. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Ariel, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So I feel like there is so much to talk about in so little time. You have 2 beautiful new chapter books that were just recently published this past summer.
Yes.
And you also have 2 more picture books coming out, right?
I do. Yeah, I have picture books. Where Is My Balloon is coming out in January, and I have We Love Fishing in fall 2020.
Fall 2020. Wow. So you've been very busy.
I try to be. I try.
Good. Yeah, and you've had great success. So I want to talk about all of them. I really do want to focus first off on the new chapter books if we could.
Oh, of course.
So, for our listeners that perhaps have not yet read your books, could you tell us a little bit about your newest chapter book series, which is called Warren and Dragon, and it's out with Puffin. So, can you tell us a little bit about the books, the stories?
Oh, sure. So it's called Born and Dragon, and the first 2 books came out in August, 100 Friends and Weekend with Chewy. They're illustrated by Mike Malbrough. He did those gorgeous covers. And books 3 and 4 will be out in 2019. And they're about a boy named Warren who's 7 years old. And the beginning of the first book, he's moving with his family to a new town. He gets into an argument with his twin sister Ellie about who's going to make more friends. And Warren thinks it will be easy to make friends, although he's never made an actual human friend before because he has his pet dragon. And who needs a human friend when you have a dragon for a best friend? The only thing about this dragon is Warren knows that he's real, but everyone else sees Dragon as like a plush toy, a stuffed animal. And so Dragon says, don't worry, I'll give you advice about how to make friends. And Dragon's advice is not always the most helpful advice.
Right.
So a whole bunch of shenanigans ensue. And hopefully I wanted a chapter book with lots of humor. And I just really loved writing these characters.
Yeah, I mean, it is so funny. I read it. Of course, I read it, and I read it again the other night. And I was laughing to myself.
Yay!
Yes, it's so funny and so witty. And one of the things that I really like about Warren and his personality, and everybody, when you read the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. But he tells half truths. So
Yes.
and I love that because kids tell half truths all the time. They don't think they're lies, but so he'll say something like, everything's fine, and then he'll say something like, of course I didn't say that everything really isn't 100% fine. Like things like that. I thought that was so awesome and cute and witty, and I just love that it's a lot in the first book in the 100 Friends.
Yes.
I saw that a lot, and it just cracked me up. It just cracked me up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to set it in first person so you could hear Warren's inner monologue sometimes about, he's not always saying what he's actually thinking. And sometimes he's doing it on purpose to be mischievous, and sometimes he's just a bit oblivious. And that's kind of one of the things I love best about Warren is how oblivious he is at times.
Right.
Because I can be that way too, even as an adult. So I have a bit in common with Warren like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm the same way too. I mean, sometimes I'm purposefully oblivious just
Right.
because for good reason. So no, and I love that about him. I think he is funny and he is witty. And so and you did mention though that you did the book in first person. Was it always in first person?
Um, yeah, I think I just started writing it as first person because when I was writing it, I got Warren's voice down pretty quickly,
Mhm.
and Dragon's voice took a little bit longer. But when I write voice, a lot of times I love first person because it can just come out so naturally.
Right.
And I got the voices down before I got the actual storyline down. So I just started writing. I'm kind of a pantser. I wasn't sure exactly where the story was going, but once I got Warren's voice, I just kind of wanted to see what was going to happen with this kid.
Yeah, I love that. And so that's a great segue in sort of talking about the process. And everybody has a very different process when they write. And I think everybody has a different process when they do different projects too. I mean, I find sometimes I have an idea that's very character based and I'll write that story, and then sometimes I'll have an idea that's situational based, and so then I'll develop the character around the situation. So
Okay.
yeah, so for this story though, it seems like you came up with the character first, and then his situation sort of followed him.
Right. I mean, it actually started as a picture book. I wrote this picture book called Nothing Scarier Than Kindergarten, where this kid was terrified of going the first day of kindergarten. And he had these three little dolls, a witch, a pirate, and a dragon telling him, "We're way scarier than kindergarten. Take us with you. We'll show you." And at the end of the day, the three dolls are terrified of kindergarten, and the boy is like, "Yeah, it's not so bad."
Right.
And it wasn't quite working. And so I put it in the drawer, and then I thought, I think I'd like to try writing a chapter book. And I thought back to this picture book, and I thought, let me take the character and make him a little older. And I first tried with the pirate character, but that didn't work. And then I tried the dragon character, and that was a lot more fun to write.
I love that. So you had this as a picture book and then you transformed it to a chapter book. So how was the process different in writing a picture book to a chapter book, if at all?
I mean, with picture books, gosh, I can figure out pretty quickly if a picture book is working for me or not.
Hmm.
If I want to finish writing it till the end, even when I finish, sometimes it's not the best manuscript, but I can tell early on if I've got an idea that I want to pursue. And with the chapter book, I kind of had to just keep pushing myself because when I started writing it, I wasn't agented, I didn't have any book deals, and so it was just my own. I wanted the challenge of seeing if I could write it and if I could finish it. And I kind of didn't know what I was doing, which in a way is good because there's no pressure.
Right.
Um, but I like the voice, I like the characters. And once I started figuring out the story, I ended up liking the story as well. But I would sit there and I'd have some chapters written, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I just had to
Right.
sit down and just try to figure it out. And it was actually a really good challenge just to kind of force myself to do it.
Right, because I mean it's different. It's different writing a picture book to a chapter book to a middle grade. I mean, even though we're writers, there is sort of a different nuances and processes that you have to, sort of cover, I guess.
Right.
Um yeah, so did you write these before you wrote I Have a Balloon, which I guess was published before Warren and Dragon were published. So what's sort of the timeline?
Right. So I wrote I Have a Balloon. When I first wrote a bunch of picture books, manuscripts, some were not very good. And then I wrote I Have a Balloon. And I remember that I put that on submission and I felt like I needed a little break from writing picture books, but I didn't want to stop writing. So that's when I decided to try writing this chapter book. And it was when I was still in the middle of writing it that I got my offer of representation from my agent, Mary Cummings. And so when we had the phone call, and she offered me based on I Have a Balloon, I told her I was in the middle of writing this chapter book and would she be interested in that too? And she said yes. And they both sold about the same time. I think it was like end of summer, fall of 2015. And the
Wow.
picture book came out pretty much 2 years later in 2017. And then the chapter books took a bit longer since they just came out in August 2018.
Right, so 3 years. I mean, so
Yeah.
the publishing process could be fairly long. It's long to sometimes sell it, and then it's even longer to get it out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen books that get sold like within a day of being submitted, and they've got an illustrator right away, and they get out there. And I've seen books that I've heard still are looking for an illustrator, or something happened that there's all sorts of stories in publishing.
Right.
It's never personal; it's just the craziness of publishing, how these things work.
Right, I guess the big word is patience. You just have to sort
Oh
of
yeah,
go with the flow and have a lot of patience and just start writing something different while, you're waiting for the other things to sort of pan out. That's what I've learned.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so I kind of went off cue here, but so to go back to the chapter books though, so because I want to talk a little bit more about your characters, Warren and Dragon. So Dragon is an imaginary friend, right? Basically. I mean,
Well,
he's plush, he's a little toy, but he's also very much alive to Warren.
Well, he is real.
Okay.
He is actually real, and I've noticed sometimes when people talk about it, they do wonder if he's imaginary, and I think by the second and third book, you really understand he is real, but it is just Warren who can see him. So I never wrote it as an imaginary friend character.
Okay.
That's just how other people react. No, they think he's not real. Um,
So he's
yeah.
real. So
Yes.
so I didn't get that. So I thought that he no, I thought that he was an imaginary friend. So this is interesting. So he in fact all the things that he does, like when he eats Warren's food or if
Yeah.
whenever he does this like sort of mischievous stuff, he's actually doing it.
Yes. He is.
Okay. I love that because I was thinking where, one of my questions was, do you see him outgrowing his imaginary friend? But I guess Dragon can stay around forever if he's in fact real.
Oh yeah, Dragon has known Warren since he was a little baby. So I mean Warren still for the first four books, he's still in second grade.
Okay.
So I have it kind of go through the school year, so he gets a bit older as it goes on. But yeah, Dragon will always be there with him.
Great. Yeah, great. So a big part of I think what I loved about the 100 Friends book is I think it's really good for kids who may have a little bit of trouble making friends. There's those kids that are really gregarious and they're out there, but there are kids that are a little bit more shy or introverted. So I feel like the first book, 100 Friends, is really good because it does follow Warren. His sister's very much like, I'm going to have 100 friends today at school. And he's like, he
Right.
don't, So I love that about the story and about him. So do you identify with Warren or do you identify with his twin sister, Ellie, who makes a lot of friends very easily?
Oh, yeah. I was definitely Warren at times growing up. And Ellie is kind of based on my wonderful older sister, Debbie, who makes friends very easily.
Okay.
And I think when I was Warren's age in seven and second grade, I had friends. That wasn't an issue then. But I remember in middle school, my dad got a new job teaching at a new school, and my sister and I went there as students. And I couldn't even make 100 friends in my grade because it was a really small grade. I think it was like about 90 kids. And it used to be an all boys school, and we were one of the first grades with girls in it. And so I think we had about like 25 girls. And we traveled a bit there, so no, I didn't know anyone from the school who lived in my town or that close to us. So it was a bit of an adjustment. I was also not, kind of a shy kid. So I did end up making some friends, but you never forget that feeling of how difficult it can be when you're in a new situation, and making friends might not come so easily.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of kids can relate to that story, and I also think a very important takeaway too is that it's about quality and not quantity, right? I mean, I think there's points where Ellie like bumps into more or less bumps
Right.
into somebody, and she's like, "Hi, I made a new friend,"
Right.
and Warren's like, "Oh gosh." So I think that's also a really good takeaway from the narrative.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. I see with my kids, my son is actually kind of like Ellie, where he will just meet a kid and they'll start playing. And he doesn't even consider, I think someone asked him, "Who's your best friend?" And he just started listing off all of his friends.
Right.
Like, he just considers like every kid he meets and plays with like his best friend. It's
Hmm.
very kind of easy for him. But he does have some that he kind of asks about play dates a little more, and he has somebody he's a bit closer to. Where my daughter, she has her group of friends who, it's definitely quality of who she really appreciates, having as friends. And it's interesting to see the difference. But yeah, the message is, I mean, you can have a ton of friends and love them all and appreciate them all, but if you have just a few friends who are really wonderful friends, that's amazing too.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's super funny. And then so for the second book, we talked a lot about the first book, and the second book is also very funny, but this one, the book is about Warren having a hamster for the weekend, having to take care of a
Right.
hamster for the weekend. And lots of shenanigans that go along with a little boy who has to take care of a hamster and also keep Dragon from maybe eating him, right?
Right. With marmalade. Yes.
Right.
Right.
So I love the dilemma. I love the dilemmas that we come up with in Kidlit. It's just they're real. They're real because it's real to Warren. I mean, that's a big deal having
Right.
your hamster get eaten. Um,
Oh, sure. So the third book is called Volcano Deluxe, and I actually just finished the final edits with my editor. And I have to say, Mike came up with an amazing cover. I can't wait to share it. And it's about Warren and Dragon see this Volcano Deluxe building kit at the toy store while he's trying to find a toy for his friend Avik's birthday party. And they see this, and they've never wanted anything more in their entire lives. But of course, Warren has completely forgotten he can earn an allowance by doing chores, and he has like no money. And so they try to think up ways that they can earn money to buy this toy. And then his sister Ellie mistakenly thinks that Warren is trying to think up ways to raise money for a charity. And so everyone thinks Warren is doing this really great thing and selfless act. And he's like, "No, I want to buy this toy
oh,
for myself."
ah,
And Dragon's like, "No, like, I have to buy this toy," even though Warren's like, "Well, maybe it'd be good to help this charity." Because Dragon, even though Warren, he's a real kid, he's can sometimes be selfish, but he also has a heart and he can learn some things. Dragon is a complete id character. He's just completely selfish and thinks only of himself. So Warren kind of has to balance those things in this book. And it gets to be pretty funny. And the fourth book, I think, is coming out in June, is called Scary Sleepover. And Warren's friend and neighbor Michael has invited Warren over to his first sleepover, and Warren is really worried that he's going to get scared at the sleepover and be embarrassed to ask his parents to come get, to go home. And so Dragon again thinks he has great advice to have Warren to figure out how Warren cannot be scared at the sleepover. And of course, it just kind of makes things worse.
right. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so that's kind of, Warren trying to deal with that and overcome his fears and face those things that he thinks are going to scare him.
I love it. I mean, both of them sound very on key for sort of this age group too, because my son's 9, and very much I could see him relating to, both of these, really wanting that toy and trying also to be, very good at the same time and doing the right thing. And then the sleepover issue I think is big at that age.
Yeah. I try to, think of stuff that would be, have humor, but also that kids would be like, wait, I understand what Warren's going through.
Yeah. You know what I love about the books too, and I should mention that you have sort of different from family relationships represented, which I think is very important. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. So Warren has his twin sister Ellie and mom and a dad, and the dad is kind of like me, works from home, and they live next to his friend Michael, who is a year below him in age. But although Michael, you get the feeling he might be a little more mature than Warren, so they
Right,
go
right.
together as friends. And Michael lives with his two moms and his younger sister Addie and his older brother, and they meet. They're really friendly at first, although Warren and Michael don't become friends for a little while in the first book because of Warren's obliviousness.
Hmm.
Um, and so I like making. I love the side characters in the stories. Like, Warren and Dragon are definitely the front and center, but characters of Ellie and Michael, and there's this girl in his class called Allison.
Hmm.
I love these characters, and I try to put them more and more into the stories and give them, layers and their own little side stories as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was excited and refreshed to see that Michael had two moms because I hadn't seen that represented in a chapter book. Yeah, and I thought that that was a great representation. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think you see a lot more representation nowadays in picture books and middle grade and YA, although there could always be more representation. And honestly, I'd love to see a chapter book written by an own voices author where the main characters' family, they are the main characters with two moms or two dads or because usually the main character is like Warren, one mom and one dad, and that's kind of how it is in chapter books. And I think there's definitely room for more representation.
absolutely. And you know what? There's hopefully there's probably some in the pipeline, you know, taking that long publishing process, and we'll be seeing those out real soon because I know
That's
that
true.
yeah,
Right.
people have been asking for it and wanting it. So I feel like, you know, we probably will see them soon enough, soon enough. Hopefully.
I think so. I mean, I mean, they've been out since August, and I haven't uh, gotten any comments. And I think children at this age just, they probably know more than us, and they understand that families are about love, and I think it's very normal for them to see different families represented in books at this point, and that's the kind of books they're growing up with. So.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're seeing it in real life. Like you said, my son has a student in his class who has two moms and from kindergarten, and my son never thought anything of it as he shouldn't, right? So, um, absolutely, I think it's more natural, and I think that it was just real refreshing to see it in your story.
Oh, thank you.
So I think we talked a little bit about the publishing journey, more or less, for your published books, whereas you had started off with I Have a Balloon and then started writing the chapter book. But sort of more generally, you know, what was your publishing process? How did you decide that you wanted to write? Have you always been a writer? So sort of, you know, how did it all happen? Because you know, you've made it, Ariel. Like
Oh.
no, you're published by big publishers. You have Simon and Schuster, you have Puffin. I mean, you're in it. You have a bunch more coming out. So I think some of our listeners would be really interested to know, you know, sort of, you know, how did you get started?
I mean, I remember enjoying creative writing ever since high school, and I think I had those teachers that said, "Wait," really gave interesting assignments and gave great feedback. And I was an okay student; I wasn't like an A+ student, but I did well with creative writing, and I loved doing it. And I had teachers who were really enthusiastic, and that makes a ton of difference.
Hmm.
And I've done it on and off for a long time, but it always seemed kind of like a pipe dream to have to get paid to do it. And it was when my son went to preschool and I had this block of time. that I started thinking, well, I have some ideas for picture books as I've been reading them to my kids, but I really don't know how to write a picture book. And I thought this is the time for me to figure it out. And so I joined SCBWI. I found critique partners, which that's one of the best things you can do is find good critique partners. And I just started to learn how to write picture books, especially for the modern market. And I started to figure out how to write these stories that I had in my mind. And I really started to love it. And I wasn't sure if anything would happen with it, but, I queried agents and luckily, I'm working with my agent, Mary Cummings, and she knew the editors to send it to. It's been a learning process for me. It's not like I had it all figured out before I started, and it's still a learning process. Even when you have books out, as you know, Michelle, you don't know when the next one will be sold and the promotion you try to figure out. It can be overwhelming, but the kidlit community is really giving and you learn a lot from other authors. So I just like the website Kidlit 411. I, read so many articles on that site, incredibly helpful. And when I was querying, Subit Club was a humongous help. When people ask me about getting into writing children's books, I always, show them those links. And yeah, it's constantly learning, being open to feedback. I'm always open to feedback. If I think a suggestion will make my book better, I take it. I've, changing the book from picture book to chapter book. I think being open to doing something like that, just trying something different is really helpful. I've done, I had one story I tried in first person, second person, third person. And I'm not sure which one I like the best. It didn't sell, but I thought it was a great exercise, like just to try it. So I think being open and trying new things is a great way to, figure out your strengths as an author and to improve what aren't your strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, being open to feedback and to revising and taking constructive criticism, you don't always have to change based upon what somebody says, but I've had people say, "No, I'm not changing it. It's exactly the way I want it." And I thought, "Oh, wow, you have to be willing to submit to an editor, and an editor is gonna have suggestions." So I think it's just part of being in the process of being a published writer,
Yes.
um, right? And
Oh,
turning things around.
definitely. I get suggestions from my wonderful critique group, and then I have some critique partners, and I don't take everyone, but I respect them so much, and their suggestions always help improve my manuscripts in some ways, and sometimes it's a huge overhaul I end up doing, and some it's just minor changes, and then I send it to my agent, and sometimes she likes it as is, and a lot of times she'll have a few suggestions, sometimes more, and I'll rework it and if once in a while I don't agree, we'll talk about it, and she's open to hearing, what I think too. And then if an editor, or not if, but when I've gotten feedback from editors, then it's time to really like go through everyone and almost all of their suggestions I take because they're such professionals. But every
Right.
once in a while, I've thought, wait a minute, I'm not sure I agree with this. And I talk with them. And luckily, the editors I've worked with are amazing and they value what I say too. So it's not that you have to take everything. And if there's something you feel is important, but you want to be respectful and you want to talk about it and explain why it's important to you. So it's just communication with your agent and your editor and being open to your critique partner's suggestion is really important. Oh,
Thing that
hello?
you like least about being
One thing I like least about being a published author?
yes.
Right. I think, gosh, I try to, have a positive attitude because I know it's, you work hard to get here. But yeah, the ups and downs, it still happens when you're a published author and you just kind of deal with them. And publishing, it's so funny. The ups and downs will come very quickly. So you try to remember the positive stuff. I had one day recently where I got some incredible news about an event. I was just on cloud nine. I was calling people. I was so happy. And then literally it was like just a couple hours later, I got news about a picture book that an editor had liked and taken to a meeting, and they ended up passing on,
Oh,
which on a normal day, it would have been, it would have been disappointing, but fine. I'm pretty good at like, moving on. But it was
right.
just that one day. I'm like, no, let me just have this day.
Oh, right. That just
Joy.
oh no. Right.
Like, and that happens all the time with so many people in publishing. You get this high, and then it's like, oh wait, no, you got this bad review or something happened, and
Oh,
you just got to hold on to like the good moments.
right, right, right. And it's a big deal to go to that editor's meeting and know that you're
Yes.
yeah, and your
Yeah.
manuscript's being considered and you're like, "Yes, I'm gonna get the
Right.
call." And then they're like,
Right.
"No,
No.
why?" Yeah. Why? Like and maybe another year. You're like, "No, not another year, this year."
Right.
Okay, no, and that's great. I love that. And then what's your favorite thing about being a published author? I know there's a lot of good stuff,
Right.
but your number
There
one,
is.
the number one.
Absolutely. My favorite thing is when people either tell me in person or they tweet, tag me in a tweet or something to tell me that they loved one of my books or their kids loved one of my books or students. It makes my day every single time
Yeah.
because it's still a bit surreal to think about something I've created that has been published and someone I might not even know is reading this and enjoying it. It's just a wonderful feeling that I wish I could somehow bottle because it's just incredibly cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your imagination is being shared with so many kids and then to see them love it, it's a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of my friends actually, her son for a report, did a report on I Have a Balloon, and he
Oh,
did his own illustrations based on Scott Magoon's illustrations, and that was incredible. It was like, it wasn't even that he just enjoyed the book. It like he went ahead and did something of his own based on the book and the illustrations, and that was really cool to see that he was creating something based on the book. It was very special.
yeah, you're inspiring other kids' creativity, which is amazing.
Yes.
So, since this is the Messy Muse, my big question is what's the messiest thing about you?
Probably my appearance, which is
No.
for a writer because unless I'm like going out or have an event, I like even here we're doing just voice interview. I don't have to get dressed up.
That's
It's kind
awesome.
of
That's the best
perfect.
part.
I
Yes.
know, I love it. So I don't know. I'm not a very messy person, although I have to say, the more books you write, the more like swag you get and everything. And it's really, I need to figure this out because it's a huge mess over in the corner of my room.
I
And I try to like organize it, and then I order more stuff, and it's just not good.
I love that, and it's funny too because I have my own swag, but I also love to get swag, and I know it's supposed to really be for the kids, but whenever I take my kids to the conferences, I'm like, can I just grab one of these bookmarks? And I don't know why. It's almost like collecting books. You like to look at them. I mean, the
Yeah,
swag always has these great illustrations, or just
I know.
it's just the creativity, even in just the swag. So I get the whole swag overload.
Oh my God, the Illustrator postcards at conferences are so beautiful. And yeah, and Robin Newman, oh, she's this author who has the most amazing swag. She has these pens with like brooms on the end that look like, a witch's broom. I'm like, I'll get one of these for my kids, and then they stay in my room. Uh,
I know, I know. I have to say, and those postcards, I always do feel a little bit bad taking them because I know they're not for me. They're for, the publishers and the art directors out there that are at the conference. But I'm like, it's just so pretty.
yes.
So I agree. I 100% agree. So let's talk about what you're working on now. What's coming up? So you have your books that are out is I Have a Balloon with Simon and Schuster, and correct me if I'm saying these wrong, and then Warren and Dragon, which is out with Puffin. So
Right.
you have
Well, the paperback are with Puffin and the hardcover are with Viking. And
okay.
I feel I only learned that like a couple years after the book deal. I didn't know these nuances of publishing, that it could be different imprints that do like hardcover versus paperback.
Right.
Right.
I just learned that right now, Ariel. So thank you for. Well, I have the paperback. So but that's interesting to know. I didn't know that. So then what are your new books? So you have the two more that we already talked about, the chapter books, but you also have two new picture books coming out.
Right. So there's the sequel to Eye of Balloon, also with Simon and Schuster and illustrated again by Scott Magoon, called Where Is My Balloon? That's coming out January 22nd. And the next picture book is called We Love Fishing, also with the same editor, Sylvie Frank at Simon and Schuster, and Mark Rosenthal is the illustrator. And I'm so excited to see the illustrations for that. And I've just been working on other books. Actually, the illustrator for the chapter books, Mike Malbrough, and I are working on a project which hasn't even gone on submission yet, but that's kind of what I've been working on lately, and we'll see if anything happens, but it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's exciting. And Mike's illustrations are amazing. I have some of his other books as well, and he's extremely talented. So it's fun. I know you guys are friends, so it's fun
Yeah.
to be able to do projects together and be published together.
Yeah, we had the book launch party together at Words Bookstore in Maplewood because he actually lives in the same town. So it's nice to be able to do joint appearances. Because I've always been jealous of illustrators at appearances. They can like do these great illustrations for the kids and the kids gobble them up. I'm like, okay, now I can do something with an illustrator. So we'll be at the Livingston Library in November and Watchung Booksellers in Montclair in November. And it's fun. It's fun having joint events.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It just puts more energy around the book too, I think, having both the writer and the illustrator there.
I think so. It's a lot of fun.
And so we are going to wrap this up, but I want one parting word of advice that you would give to our creative listeners. And it could be anything about writing, publishing, the process, anything.
I think, yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I have learned that have been helpful, but I have to say, I have a critique group, say Allie, Emma, Katie, and Kristen. Hi. They are so wonderful, not just for their feedback, but just dealing with the ups and downs of publishing and sharing the successes and commiserating over the lows and just being there for each other.
Absolutely. And so for people that are listening, you can try to find partners through SCBWI. If you go to the SCBWI website, there's the different regional chapters. You can find critique partners there.
Yeah.
How did you find your critique partners, Ariel?
So I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. I think just, from online, the kidlit community is huge online, especially on Twitter.
Yeah, and the great thing now is that, you don't have to be in the same town, in the same state. You can have partners anywhere. It's just online. You just send it and chat, and you can do Zoom and Twitter, and there's just so many ways to connect.
It's true.
And to find people.
Yeah. I also have a writers group where we don't go and critique each other. My friend Rita organized it, and that's kind of how I knew Mike through this group. And we just go out for coffee every once in a while and talk and get out of our houses and away from our computers, which can be important. If you're a writer, you're just kind of home a lot working. It's really nice to get out and talk with other writers. And sometimes we'll ask each other to critique things, but it's not when we meet up. And so that's kind of nice, just to get out and talk with people who know what you're going through. And I really appreciate meeting up with those people.
Yeah, absolutely. To get out from behind the computer and experience real life sometimes is fun, right?
Yes, exactly.
Good advice. Good advice, Ariel. So thank you so much for being with us today. I had so much fun talking to you. I love your books. I really do love your books. And I can't wait to read the new ones that are coming out next year. We have a lot to look forward to from you.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. I love knowing you too, and it's been wonderful being on your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime, anytime. So you have a great day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, you too.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today.
Thank you for listening. To connect with the My Messy Muse community, please visit us on Facebook at My Messy Muse. To learn more about my books, and how to work with me, please visit my website at michellemcavoy.com. That's Michelle, Michele, McAvoy, MCAVOY.com. Thanks and have a great day.
Are you ready for it? Better take your shot. It's gonna do the things that you wanna do, yeah. 'Cause this time is the right time, baby. You're the star and this is all about you. Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine.